They say the sky used to be closer, not metaphorically, physically. Long ago, before maps agreed with one another, before stars learned to stay in place, the sky rested on the shoulders of giants. Not many, just 7. They were called the bearers, and each stood at a different edge of the world, arms raised, backs bowed, holding the heavens in place so the land beneath could exist without being crushed by infinity. The sky was not light then, it had weight. It pressed downward like an ocean held upside down. No one remembers the bearers' true names. Names were too small for them. Instead, they were remembered, when they were remembered at all, by what they endured. The North Bearer held the sky where it froze. Auroras wrapped around his arms like living chains, and the stars above him burned cold and sharp. Ice grew along his spine until he could no longer tell where his body ended and the world began. The South Bearer carried heat and pressure. Storms were born, screaming against his shoulders, hurricanes grinding endlessly at his ribs. His breath became wind so hot it bent the air. The Eastern Bearer held the dawn. Light poured endlessly through his fingers, tearing at his hands each morning as the sun rose too early and too heavy. The Western Bearer held the sunset. Every evening the sky tried to sleep, and every evening he forced it back awake, grinding dusk into red stone beneath his palms. 2 others stood where oceans met land, bracing the horizon itself, holding back tides, keeping the sky from slipping sideways into the sea. And at the very center of the world stood the youngest of them, Talin. Talin was not the strongest. He was not the tallest, but he was the only one who could still feel time moving. Where the others had slowly surrendered sensation, becoming more pillar than being, Talin still noticed change. He felt seasons pass across his skin. He remembered rain as something cold, not just pressure. He noticed when the stars shifted their weight, when the sky leaned just a little more heavily on certain nights. For thousands of years, the world lived quietly beneath them. Mountains grew where their feet pressed deepest. Rivers formed from condensation along their arms and wrists. Clouds snagged on their fingers and tore themselves into weather. Life flourished because the sky stayed where it belonged, and no one thanked them, because no one knew. Civilizations rose without ever looking up far enough to ask why the sky did not fall. Temples were built to gods who never held anything. Wars were fought beneath a ceiling of blue that was taken completely for granted. Talin heard everything. Children laughing as they chased one another through fields formed from his shadow. Soldiers whispering apologies into the dirt before battle. Kings promising futures they would never live to see. He learned the sound of grief, the sound of hope, the sound of fear disguised as prayer, and slowly, dangerously, Talin began to wonder something forbidden. What happens if I let go? Not out of cruelty, out of curiosity. He asked the others once, his voice grinding through the firmament like distant thunder. What would happen, Talin said, if the world learned how heavy the sky truly is? The North Bearer did not answer. He had forgotten language centuries ago. The South Bearer groaned, a sound like continents shifting in their sleep. The others remained still. They had accepted eternity. Talin had not, so he bent his arms. Just a little. The sky dipped. Tides surged where they never had before. Storms grew taller, angrier, more confused. Stars slid against one another like nervous thoughts that could no longer stay in place. For the first time in history, people noticed. The sky felt closer. Scholars argued. Priests panicked. Animals fled inland. The air itself grew thick, as if the world were bracing for impact. Talin watched fear ripple across the land and felt regret settle heavier than the sky itself. This was not understanding, so he lowered the sky again, just for a moment. enough for people to see it move, enough to realize the heavens were not infinite, that they were being held, that someone was suffering so the world could exist. Legends began that night, stories of a bent horizon, of stars pressing low enough to be touched, of a shadow at the center of the world, arms shaking. And then the other bearers moved. For the first time since creation, they felt the imbalance, the risk. The Western bearer turned his head, stone cracking as ancient muscles protested. The Eastern bearer's fingers curled, grinding dawn into sparks that rained down as shooting stars. Together they spoke, not in words, but in weight. If one fails, they warned, all will fall. Talin understood. He had endangered everything, so he made a choice no bearer had ever imagined. He lifted the sky higher than it had ever been, higher than memory, higher than fear, higher than the world could see. The strain tore him apart. His arms shattered into mountain ranges. His spine collapsed into a vast plateau. His knees drove so deep into the earth that oceans were born to fill the space. His heart burned itself out and became the first place the sun ever learned to rest on the sea. But the sky rose, higher, lighter, free. When Talin finally fell, the others followed, one by one, releasing the heavens forever. Some became cliffs, some became islands, some simply vanished into dust and legend. That is why the sky is so far away now, why storms feel smaller, why stars seem distant, why something vast feels missing when you look up at night. The giants are gone, not slain, not defeated, spent. They gave the world room to grow, and if, on certain nights, the sky feels unbearably high and cold, if you ever feel very small beneath it, that is not loneliness. That is the echo of a giant who once held everything up and chose to let go so you wouldn't have to.